What I want to talk about is reflection and action. And so currently, in thinking about legal education and the ways in which we might think about how to improve and train lawyers, we talk a lot about reflection, and a lot of that reflection happens after a student performs. And what I want to talk about is how expert practitioners, expert lawyers use reflection in action, and how throughout the curriculum we can instill this as one of our learning goals. Reflection in action is a place for students to actually stop while they're engaging in some activity and do what expert practitioners do. They stop, they think about the different alternatives they have, and then they act upon it. So every day, lawyers are required to think on their feet and respond to unpredictable situations. When they do that, they're just not saying the first thing that comes to their head or doing the first thing that they think of. They're reflecting in action. And that means that they're going through a process. It's virtually invisible to us, but what they do is they stop, they figure out what's going on in the situation, they evaluate it, they strategize about what to do, and then they come up with an option and act. And all of this happens very quickly in the things that expert lawyers do. But by breaking this type of process down for students, it will actually allow them to see and engage in this process at a very early stage in their novice lawyer career. And so hopefully they'll get to the stage of expert lawyer even faster. And this is what expert lawyers do no matter what type of lawyer you are, litigator or transactional lawyer, whether you're talking on the phone with a opposing party who's trying to change a term in a contract in a way that you had never imagined, or whether you're trying to respond to a witness on the stand who just brought up information you'd never heard before. Reflection and action is what expert lawyers do to make better decisions in the situation they're in and actually perform well in these circumstances. And what I want to challenge law professors to do is figure out where in the space in any kind of classroom they can instill this type of reflection and action through a three-step process that I call freeze frames. It's deliberately scheduled in the middle of a performance, and you do one, you stop them, and you ask them to evaluate the situation. Two simple questions work. What worked? What's not working? And by asking those two questions, you elicit a range of perspectives from everybody in the space about what is working well and what's not working well. Then you stop them and you move to the second stage, which is to ask them, what strategies could we be using here? And that helps you start getting outside the box. So the things that are going to come to the novice's mind immediately are going to get expanded. And it's a place where the role of the teacher comes in to help ask questions that could generate more options than they would have come up with in the moment that they were acting in whatever context they're acting. And then you ask them, okay, which of these options work? So the third stage is to ask them, what option are you going to pick? What action are you going to take? And then you make them act. And so you begin by evaluating the situation, what works, what doesn't work. Then you ask them to identify options, and then you ask them to act on one of those options. Reflection and action, and freeze frames in particular, would benefit students because it allows them to do two things that we try to do as law professors, and we want them to become better experts at by the time they graduate. Thinking like a lawyer, which we're constantly engaging them to do, and then also combining that with acting like a lawyer. People might be skeptical about how reflection and action could be used in a large doctrinal class, but even from the first day in a 1L class, you're trying to train students to think like a lawyer. For example, in my criminal law class, they were really struggling with what insanity is. I could stop them while they're talking about the rationale. I could stop and ask everybody to take a minute. What's working here? What's resonating with you from the answers that the students are giving, and what are you struggling with? Then you can come up with strategies of where this conversation could go, and then you can actually decide or act on the one that is the best holding or rationale in that case. And that doesn't take much longer than the Socratic dialogue I will engage them in, but the benefit of it is every single student in that class is confronting what the problem is that the one student who's answering the question is facing, and it's a group effort to come up with what to do about it. And so then the holding that they discover or the issue that they discover is something that they've all put their mind through. And that's the way I think that thinking like a lawyer and acting like a lawyer can come together even in a large classroom. As students experience things, they are going to begin to develop to learn it at a different level, at a deeper level, than if they're just hearing something that a professor lectures to them. But what can enhance and deepen that learning even further is if you get them to actually think about it. If they could figure out from that learning experience what they can do differently in the future, so they will do it differently in the future. And so I think reflection and action can benefit students because it's teaching them a really simple process. And at the beginning, it's 3 steps. All you have to tell them to do is, once they stop the action, evaluate it, strategize about it, and then act on the strategy that they think is best. And this can be done throughout the curriculum, from a very large class where you have 70, 80 students to something smaller like a clinic simulation setting. And I think that one of the things professors are really struggling with is how do you get students to be more active in their classroom? How do you do reflection without having 80 papers to grade at the end of the day? And I think reflection and action, because you're doing it in the classroom space, it doesn't take more time from the professor's class plan, but it engages every single student in thinking about the problem that they're struggling with.